Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Frank's Book Review. So today I'm going over a book as old as time, The Prince by Machiavelli. So, a lot of people call Machiavelli the devil. Over time, they've basically, the mob, Tupac, have used basically this book as a reason to act the way they do. Bill Clinton's read this book. A lot of powerful people have read this book. There's a lot of good stuff in it. And if you want to misconstrue what he says, I can see how someone can take this as the basis to be a bad person. Not saying anyone's a bad person. I'm just saying that's how people prescribe Machiavelli. Now, to kind of get the idea of where Machiavelli is coming from, all you have to do is kind of look at the last page first. So basically, in the last page, it's kind of talking about how everyone's running the train on Italy. Basically, everyone's taken over Italy. Everyone's conquered Italy. Italy hasn't been itself, and everyone owns a piece of Italy, and everyone's coming to Italy and taking their own for it. And basically, it's just Machiavelli's kind of a patriot, and he's kind of like, listen, Italy's been passed around to everybody. We need kind of a prince to kind of rise up and take control of this country, and kind of unite it so we can be Italy again. So basically in this book, he describes lots of different ways to battle, and basically different ruling ways and how those have worked for some countries and how they haven't. Well, how is this useful? We don't really usually running around taking over countries, raising armies, isn't really all that useful anymore, it doesn't seem. Well, you could look at it a lot of times. Some people may look at it in business and in ways of running their lives, as I think a lot of these people have, as to the concepts, obviously not taking literally, could be useful. So one concept that he does talk about is how when you have a country, you want to look the most, despite what you do, and probably in government and Wall Street, you probably see a lot of things go on that aren't the most moral. Probably keep them up at night, probably not, but should keep them up at night. And the point of the matter is you see a lot of politicians, especially when they go up there and they talk about how it's for you, it's for you, it's for you. That's kind of a part of Machiavelli. He talks about how that you, no matter what you do, behind closed doors, you really want your country or your people to look at you as if you are the best, the most moral person that there is. He also says that you want them to always need you, so they don't kind of want to overthrow you. How is that relevant? Well, let's look at it to say if you had a mom and pop shop, right? There's not many towns, one stoplight town, not a lot of business. So if you train up an employee to do everything, what do they need you for anymore? They save enough money, they can go start their own company, and they could potentially run you out of business. So this is a part of Machiavelli that he talks about. You always want to be needed. You want them to always remind them, and always let them know they need you. So if you don't train everyone on how to run the company, and they only know certain aspects of the company. One only knows the cash register. One only knows something else. One only knows the paint. Then they always need you to keep a roof over their head, because they don't know everything. They can't go in business against you. They need the job, and strengthening your company to stay in business. And so he talks about that, how you always want to make sure that they realize that you're needed. He also talks about a lot of things about auxiliary defenses and using auxiliary defenses. What's that say? Well, auxiliary defenses would be using if you were America, say, and you needed to borrow Canada's army to take over Mexico and make it part of the United States. Basically, it's saying auxiliary services, lent out people in general aren't loyal. They can always come back. They realize how weak you are on your own, and they can come back to overcome you. You could see this a lot. Now, this could be good in life, if you think about it. if you don't have people that are loyal to you in your life, if you have people only there that are maybe not great people, but you keep them around to help that you achieve something, they always, and if you're not loyal to them, they're not loyal to you. There's always that one person that may come back at the other person, knowing that they can't do it on their own, knowing how weak and vulnerable they are, to come and take what's that. They could help you start a business and then take off and start a business to compete against you. You could look at this in anything, in dating. People that are only there for one thing, or a good time. Maybe they like the money to spend money on them. They're never loyal long term, and it speaks to loyalty and not going outside of people you can trust and people that you believe in long term to help you, and that does speak to life. I mean, you can't really trust people that have no loyalties to you or only have loyalties to themselves, because in the end, there's always a very strong possibility they're going to come back to bite you. Other things Machiavelli talks about are fighting two front wars. Basically, it talks about this pope. He was fighting, I believe, France, and he had this other enemy on the other side. And so he made a truce with the other guy to go take over France or what have you. Once he was done with that one, he cheated the other guy and went over and fought the other guy, took over the other guy. What's that tell you? Well, not much, but it is a strange topic to take over, because this book was written so long ago that is the strategy that Hitler used in regards to Russia. Granted, it didn't work for him against Russia because of Russia's cold winters, but it is interesting to see these strategies used over time. So I just mentioned that. It also talks about how being immoral and people knowing that they're immoral, they're always going to take you down in the end. It talks about this guy who was raised by his uncle that raised him as a son. And he came back and told the uncle, hey, can you help me get in with these people? And the uncle's like, of course, And then he kills the uncle, and everyone that can challenge him takes over. He ruled for about a year, and then eventually someone else came over and took him down. And that basically speaks to being moral with your people. Back to what I said earlier. People do bad things. People do bad things everywhere in life, probably. But he says you always have to you should come across as the most moral. And to lead. And this shows how it was quite obvious that he killed all the people that could come against him, and that eventually it didn't last very long before they took him down. He talks about how kind of running a socialist country, how if you're going to promise people everything, you're going to have to tax them heavily, and whoever you're giving everything to that you need to stay in power, you better not be taxing them. You better be taxing someone else very heavily. And so that's kind of a point that if people look at you negatively, you're not going to last longer. That you can look at that in business, you can look at that in friendship, you can look at that in anything. People you think you're friends, if they don't have a good image of you, they're going to come back at you and stab you in the back at some point, metaphorically, obviously. And the same thing in a company, I mean, if people don't think you're a good person and you don't have their best interest at heart, they're going to leave and go elsewhere, and where they might not just work very hard, and costing you money in the long run. Other parts that I want to touch on would be that, so basically Machiavelli is basically overall just giving life goals and looking at basically war techniques to take over his country, to give his country back. And yes, if you take it at war, obviously he's a bad person. It talks about killing people and being cruel. It does talk about cruelty. But look at the strategies. The strategies he talks about could be useful to a person. If you take the theory, so he talks about democracy. He does talk about democracy, and he talks about how democracy you have to become a part of, or you have to destroy. The reason I bring that up is because if you look at kind of what's going on in the world today, um, I just want you to think about that. You can either join democracy or destroy it. And this is going back to the 1500s. So, just something to think about as you see what's going on in the world today. But a lot of the other things he talks about, are very useful techniques to just kind of think about. You don't want to be Machiavelli. I'm not saying to be Machiavelli, and I'm not saying to be cruel to people. I'm not saying to hurt people. Absolutely not. That's completely crazy. But what I am saying is you can look at that when becoming when dealing with people, about becoming across more moral. You're coming across. How do you come across the people? The people in your life, are they real? Do they have loyalties to you, or are they there just for a good time and then they're out and coming back to bite you in the long run? Now, it also does talk about people that inherit princedoms as opposed to people that work on their own. Now, they do talk about people that obviously he does obviously inherits princedom, that inherits wealth. How the monarchy does have obviously a better chance of surviving, right? If you have money, it's easier to not lose it as long as you do the same things that the people before you did to make it, right? Now, if you don't do that, obviously the monarchy is going to, in this example, it's going to fall. It's going to crumble, right? But you're going to have a longer window in regards to that, as you would as someone that made it on their own, made their wealth on their own, became their own prince on their own, right? And the way you would do that is by, but it may be stronger, like you say, because they made it on their own. Even though it was more fragile in the early stages, it could grow stronger because there's more building blocks to get there. They had to get with the people. They had to get the people to like them. They had to raise in power. They had to move farther and farther up the ladder. So their basis is stronger because they had to put in all the work to get there. As opposed to monarchies that were inherited, some people do argue that they sometimes do fall because the children don't necessarily have the same integrity, the same image as their fathers and before them, and that could be looked at in life, right? If you don't have the same work ethic as the people that made a fortune, how do you keep the fortune? You might keep it longer, but it's gonna wear. You're gonna have a longer shelf life, but it's gonna wear. And so you've got to really think about that in life. Just because you say you come from money, just because you come from money doesn't mean that you can get lazy. It doesn't mean that at all. It means you have to. It would help to look at the habits of the people that came before you, to preserve that, and also the people that make it themselves. I think anyone that's probably self-made probably looks at themselves and sees all the hard work they had to do to get there, and they probably do realize that it is stronger because they had to come and work so hard for it that they appreciate it more, so they work harder for it. And like in a princedom, people had to choose you, and you didn't come from anything. They had to choose you to be their leader, so it makes them stronger. It makes your princedom stronger because you had to build the ideals to build what you built on your own, and you had to be that person on your own. It wasn't inherited to you. So that's all I wanted to get into, really, in regards to The Prince by Machiavelli. Like I said, if you don't take it literally, now it is a hard read. It's a very short book, but it is a hard read because it's translated probably 1 million times, 500 years ago, at least, 5,100. 500 years ago. And so it is hard to read. And people might say these different war tactics and everything shows you to be cruel, that it is more better. A lot of people say that Machiavelli says it is better to be feared than loved. And the only thing I want to say to that, though, he says it is better to be loved if you can always count on people to be good people. There's a show on CNBC called American Greed that shows us very much so. There's shows on the news all the time. They Catch a Predator. There's lots of things on TV and on in the world that show us that you can't always choose. You can't always count on people to be moral people. So you do need some type of deterrent. Now, if we look in regards to the mob, killing people is probably a little over the top, huh? But and Tupac made so many mistakes. He shot cops. That was weird. You shouldn't do stuff like that. And like I'm saying, I'm not saying violence is a good thing. I'm saying violence is a horrible thing, and you should not do violence. But you do need deterrence, right, in life, and to be looked at in a certain way to stop people from doing wrong things. Because there are a lot of people in this world you can't trust. There are a lot of people you can't trust. And that comes with all, that's why you have to look at things like auxiliary services, and making sure that the people around you are loyal, and looking at all the other things, and making sure that you have a good base, and that you have the good work ethic, and that you have good morals and integrity to build your case. And like you said, it's better to be feared to a certain extent. Being feared could be that you could fire somebody and they could lose their job. It could be that simple. But you need a deterrent from people to obviously stop them from coming at you. And but he does say it'd be better to be loved if you could trust everybody. But it's better to be feared than loved because you can't trust everybody. And so I did want to touch on that as well. So basically, yeah. So it is a hard book to read, like I said. And but if you look at the theories and you don't take it verbatim, and you look at some of the theories, you can see how some of them. I'm not saying everything's great that Machiavelli does and says, by any means. I'm not saying anything violent, good. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying some of the theoretical things that he says could be used by people to maybe improve themselves. Obviously, you don't want to take everything someone says, but some of the things he does say could be used for people to improve their lives and improve their image. And I think that's probably why you see so many powerful people that do read Machiavelli and are familiar with Machiavelli. But with that being said, that's my opinion on it. And let me know what you're thinking. If you watch this, put things in the comments. Tell me if you think I'm completely wrong. It's very possible. I don't think so, but it's very possible. So I'm interested to see your feedback. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.